This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and today I want to go through and explain a bit more around this idea of ego, how I teach it, and how I would sort of perceive ego as well. So, one of the key things here is that ego is what is there in the absence of essence. So, essence is another word for spirituality or spirit or soul. Nothingness, for example, could be in that sort of space as well. But you will often hear me refer to the ego as ego structures, rather than it being this sort of like this evil spirit that lurks within us. It's actually just simply the structures that we have created in order to feel safe. Now, when we're a child, it makes sense. As we get older and become an adult, our ego structures can often get in the way of us, not be us. And we mistaken them as us. This is my personality, this is who I am. It's like, no, a personality is not saying someone you are or something you are. A personality is something you do, very different. So the key thing there is that our ego structures are often the frames of reference, the programs or the thinking patterns that actually arise and are a perceptual filter before we respond to reality, basically. And so one of the key things here is that ego structure isn't just about trying to be, one of the most obvious ones is what I'm about to explain, which is like trying to be seen. So, look at what I can do, showing off, etc. Like that's a form of ego structure, but it's the most obvious. It's the easiest one to see. Some ego structures, though, are also avoiding confrontation. That's an egoic structure. Other egoic structures are simply just going, well, I just put my head down and get my work done. It's like, well, there's still an egoic structure there going on. These are all things that have allowed us to change the way that we deal with reality. But here's an interesting thing. Ego is not bad. The egoic structures that we have are simply tools that we have developed on a subjective level to interact with society, with the way that the world operates and runs. So, these so-called needs are not necessarily a negative thing. It's just like, are we aware of these egoic structures? Are we deciding to interact in a particular way, or is it just the way that we blindly do it and we think that's okay? Like, well, what's really going on? So there's a couple of things that would be worth paying attention to with relation to our egoic structures, and how often they actually get in the way of us experiencing reality rather than the way that we experience reality. So we will experience reality, external events will occur, and then we filter it through our perceptual filters. And in doing so, we no longer get to experience reality. We experience our perceptual filters of reality. And I often talk about metaprograms or thinking patterns. They're just one form. The main form, our thinking patterns are what gets in the way of us being us. But, with these patterns, it's like we start to see that something occurs, and I either look at something like one of the patterns is global detailed, right? It's just one of the ways that we sort information. So people will be like, oh my God, look at the sunrise. And that's the way that person is interpreting reality. Whereas the other person is able to be quite detailed in how the waves were crashing, almost like as if it was over the sun, onto the golden beach with did you notice the dolphins, or did you notice the birds, or did you notice this? And so they're looking at the detail of a particular situation, but maybe they're not seeing the beach. Maybe they're missing the larger picture. And we see this in work. People that are really good at procedures and details are really sort of looking at, well, hang on a sec, that big picture is fine, but it's irrelevant when we're not getting done X, Y, and Z. Whereas the visionaries are really global. And so this is one of their egoic structures. And it's just simply, once again, a perceptual filter of how they've valued receiving information into the brain over time. We're going, well, actually, I really, this is the vision. This is what we're working towards: a better earth, a better world, a bigger bottom line, more in innovative products, happier clients, whatever it may be. They've got this overarching sort of vision, and they're like, I'm not interested in the details, just make it happen. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that every single human being is binary on that particular spectrum. Some people, I mean, it's contextual for one, so our egoic structures are contextual. This is why we can act a particular way out in public, but act a different way out at home. If we're in a share house, we'll still act differently than we would if we're alone in a share house or in public, or at a birthday, or a whole different sort of array of situations. And so all of our egoic structures are often contextual. And so it's about sort of going, is this the way that I'm simply reactioning my behavior to the world, or am I choosing this response? Is this a response that I'm choosing based on this current moment? And is that warranted? Is it actually true? I'm really anxious in this situation. Should I be anxious? Why should I be anxious is probably a better question. Why am I not anxious all the time? So if I'm anxious about this, why am I not anxious all the time? It's like, well, something bad could happen here. It's like, something bad could happen all the time. Why aren't you anxious all the time? I am anxious all the time. It's like, okay, well, how often has that anxiety proven to be true for you? How often has the bad thing that you thought would happen, all the time? Okay, like when? Like this one time. Okay, that's one time. What about another time? Well, there was also this that wasn't very nice. It's like, okay, 2. So how many days have you had in your life? Well, there's fucking thousands upon thousands, right? And so far we've got 2 things out of thousands of days, let alone moments in those days. So how often does this actually occur? It's like, I don't know, not very often. It's like, right, so does that warrant and if the person wants to, then they want to warrant that egoic structure, then they will. But also the other thing here I'm looking at is the person's constantly looking at the future based on their preferences and neglecting the past, whereas other people will lead into the past and neglect the future. Opportunities, they'll look at the past experience and be like, well, it never happened, so why should it happen again, as opposed to the opportunities of looking forward. And these are simply just perceptual filters of the way that we actually interpret reality. And so, the most powerful thing that we have an opportunity to do is to see the way that we look at the world and go, why did I decide on this being the right way? It's not the right way, Dave. I know it's not the right way, but it's the way that I'm most native to, right? It's natural, but really it's what it's familiar, right? Which means it's family, which means even if I'm arguing and fighting and all that, I'm going to be closer to this because it's familiar, it's family, as opposed to it being the healthiest and the best situation for me at this stage in my life and development. So these are simply ways to really see the egoic structures. Now what's happened is that as we move closer towards our true essence, which is void of being controlled by our egoic structures, the closer we move towards that, the ego, let's look at it as the evil spirit now. The ego wants to get back in you, because if it's not in you, it's like a scary movie where the spirit needs a body to be in to be alive. If it doesn't have a body, then it can't exist. Right, and so what happens is that this egoic structure almost wants to get back in your body. So you'll hear it in your friends. The friends will be like, "You've changed. You're not as cool as you used to be. Not as fun as you used to be." Your parents might say to you, "They're like, what do you think? You're better than us?" There's a whole range of different ways, and all it is your old egoic structures basically representing itself as a spirit in somebody else's body, trying to get back into you to keep you, well, inverted commas, safe. It doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you scared. That's really fucking different, because if we think that we constantly need safety, it's because we're constantly scared, right? Whereas we may not need safety, but like, I do, Dave. Have you not seen the news? Yeah, so we're actually living in one of the most prosperous and healthiest times in humankind, but if you fucking look at enough news, it'll tell you otherwise. So is it really news? Is it really noteworthy events, right? Weather and sport? Is it really? Or is it just trying to get you to watch it because that's how they get money? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. That's just a good fucking question. Either way, on that note, Tim, I hope you found this podcast beneficial. It would mean the world to me if you did, that if you'd pass on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. If you haven't already, then please jump on and search Mood Prep Online on Facebook and join the conversation there. I'd love to see you in there and hear what you found beneficial out of this podcast and any others. Otherwise, that's it. That's me done. Until tomorrow, peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
To be everything at once, beyond blinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.